Welcome back. We will study about the polar regions here today. The very word polar regions brings to our mind the Antarctic and Arctic circles, right? Now, the Arctic and the Antarctic have a number of features that are common in nature. Now, before we go to these particulars in details, what we will learn today is first the differences, then we'll go for the similarities. Low temperature, darkness, all these are common features, right? Darkness that lasts for several weeks or months in winter and magnificent expanses of ice. This is something characteristics of the polar regions, right? You have meters and meters of deep layers of ice over there. There are several different types of uh, ice found over there, including sea ice, which is ice that contains salt, and ice caps and icebergs, which contain solely of freshwater ice. However, once we get past these initial similarities, it doesn't take long to realize that Arctic and Antarctic are two totally different regions. Now, these two regions, though they sound very similar, they have very low temperature, they have ice in common. Some of the types of ice are also matching. This doesn't make the two regions same. They have huge number of differences that makes Antarctic and Arctic Circle totally different from one another. Now, when we take up each of these in details, we'll understand the basic difference between the two. Fine. We'll talk about the Arctic region first. It has got a frozen ocean surrounded by land. This is our North Pole. It is located approximately in the center of the Arctic Ocean. The ocean here is covered to a large extent by permanent ice sheet. Now, what do you understand by permanent ice sheet? Permanent ice sheet means the content of ice, the ice will not melt. Okay, this is your permanent ice sheet. It holds almost 10% of all the Earth's continental ice. That means 7% of world's reserves of fresh water. Okay. Now let's come to the outer limit part. Place where the temperature never exceeds 10 degrees Celsius during the warmest month. Now, which is the warmest month? Warmest means what? The temperature is expected to be more over there. Warmest month means it is July. Now let's learn a little about the expanses. It has got 21 million kilometer square area over there, 14 million kilometer square of which is the Arctic Ocean. This will come in the superscript. Fine. You can't really talk about a single Arctic climate. Fine. In fact, there are a number of different climates depending on the latitudes, altitude, distance from the coast, or whether there are marine currents in the vicinity or not. So, what will make the difference? I'm talking here about different types of climate. So, what are the parameters that will make it different? One is your latitude, the other is the altitude, that means height, distance from the coast, the weather is colder inland, fine. And fourth is marine currents, presence of marine currents, whether marine currents are there or not. For example, the average temperature in the middle of winter is minus 33 degrees centigrade on Greenland sheet ice or Greenland ice sheet. Whereas in the neighboring coastal area, at the same time of the year, the average temperature is usually minus 7 degree Celsius. Fine. This wide variation in temperature is caused by relatively warm ocean currents. This means that although it is very cold, the temperature in the Arctic is less harsh than in the Antarctic as a result of the warmth carried there by currents in the ocean and atmosphere. The Arctic is a polar region that consists of Arctic Ocean, adjacent seas and parts of Alaska, Canada, Finland, Greenland, Iceland, Norway, Russia and Sweden. This region has a number of characteristic features that we had just discussed. You need to pause the video as and when required and take down the required notes. Wherever there is a doubt, please feel free to ask. The Arctic Circle, that is 66 degrees 33 minutes north, delimits the Arctic in terms of solar radiation. In theory, areas north of the Arctic Circle has at least one day without daylight in the winter and at least one nightless night in the summer. It sounds pretty different, right? Nightless night in summer. That means what? Daylight throughout the day. You don't have night, though it's night. In practice, this doesn't happen everywhere because the surface of the earth is uneven and the light refracts in the atmosphere. Fine. Based on temperature, the monthly average temperature in the Arctic is below 10 degrees Celsius throughout the year, even in summer. The frost line follows the temperature defined area. The frost line is not a narrow but a zone of like tens of kilometers wide between the northern coniferous forest and the tundra region. In this demarcation, the Arctic is predominantly wooded tundra and glaciers. Permafrost increases the area of Russian Arctic compared to the other delimitations. Permafrost is soil that stays frozen for at least 2 consecutive years. The ice cover determines the Arctic nature of marine areas. Sea ice is highest in February, March region this time of the year. Sea ice is highest and lowest in September. The surface of the Arctic ice is monitored almost in real time by satellites. So, next we'll move to the Antarctic region. The Antarctic region is also a region of frozen expanse. Okay. The Antarctic is a polar region around Earth's southern pole, opposite to that of the Arctic region or the North Pole. The Antarctic comprises the continents of Antarctica, the Kerguelen Plateau, and other island territories located on the Antarctic plate of south of Antarctic convergence. Okay. A frozen continent surrounded by the Southern Ocean or South Pole. It is located more or less in the center of Antarctica at an altitude of 2,850 meters. The continent is covered with a thick ice cap up to approximately 5 kilometers thick. It holds 90% of the Earth's continental ice, over 60% of the planet's freshwater reserves. The outer limit, if we talk about the Antarctic convergence, okay, area is approximately 14 million kilometers square with an additional 10 million kilometers square of ice or sea ice in winter. This is the fifth in size among the world's continents. Its landmass is almost wholly covered by vast ice sheet. You must be knowing that this is often described as a continent of superlatives. Antarctica is the world's southernmost continent. It is also the world's highest, driest, windiest, coldest, and iciest continent. Please remember these points: highest, driest, windiest, and coldest, iciest as well, continent of the world. Antarctica is about 5.5 million square miles in size, lying almost concentrically around the South Pole. Antarctica's name means opposite to Arctic. So this gives you a positional idea. Fine. Opposite to the Arctic. It would be essentially circular except for the outflaring Antarctic Peninsula, which reaches up to the southern tip of South America. So this is the basic idea that you need to learn about Antarctic region. So just a recapitulation of what I have just said. The Antarctic is a very dry continent, driest rather. In the heart of the ice sheet, there is only 2 to 5 centimeter of precipitation per year, and that also is not in the form of water, but in the form of what? In the form of snow, which is less than Sahara. So this is as good as a cold desert. So from this, what you can understand is luxuriant growth of vegetation possible here or not? Vegetation is absolutely not possible over here. Almost almost every part of the continent has an average annual temperature lower than minus 25 degrees Celsius. Fine. The lowest temperature ever recorded was minus 89.2 degrees Celsius at Russia's Vostok base on 21st of July 1983. Temperatures are a little milder at the coast on the Antarctic Peninsula than they are inland. So, the climate on the subantarctic islands is warmer still, this is because of the marine currents. Since the marine currents are there, you can experience a little bit of warmth at that region. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible. In fact, the average annual temperature barely makes it above the freezing point. So you can understand the condition there, right? So in a nutshell, we can say this is a cold desert where access to water determines the abundance of life. Now let's see the similarities and the dissimilarities in these two regions. Antarctica is in the South Pole. It is coldest, driest, windiest, and iciest in the world. Sorry. Animals found are penguins. It's a continent. Then coming to Arctic region, polar and igloos in the Arctic regions are very common. Owls, walruses, caribou, and wolves are there. The Arctic is in the North Pole, slightly warmer than Antarctica. Now, what are the similarities? Similarities are seals are common in both of these regions, icebergs are common. Both the regions are pretty uninhabitable. That means what? Staying in these regions is difficult. Freezing temperature and they are dry. Precipitation is not that uh, common, isn't it? So it is dry in nature. See, these pictures uh, will give you the positional aspect. These pictures are studied to understand the climate change and all these things. Okay. Now, this is one important point. Sun reflectivity on ice and ocean. Hmm. When rays of the sun are incident on a surface, the surface absorbs a part of it and reflects back the rest. You agree to it? Now, ice or snow, this part, ice or snow, will normally, ice or snow will normally absorb 15% of it. Okay, see, 15% of it is absorbed by ice or snow. Water, on contrary, absorbs 93%. Can you see? Water, on contrary, absorbs 93% of it. So, 15% is absorbed over here and 85% is reflected back. Here, for water surface, what is happening? 93% is absorbed over here and only 7%, the remaining part is reflected back. So increased warming means what? Less ice and more open water. The ice will melt and will get converted to what? It will get converted to water. So increased warming leads to less ice and more open water. And warmer water means more ice melt and so on. So this is a perpetuating cycle type of a thing. Means it is warm, so it's not a perpetuating cycle as such. Like temperature is increasing here and this is causing water to, I mean ice to melt and water level to rise. So this goes on. And why is this going on and this is becoming a global cause, a global challenge nowadays? This is very much because of global warming. Global warming is causing temperature to rise and causing the icebergs or ice caps to melt and increase the amount of water. Right? Evidence and impact of Arctic warming. Hmm. sea ice, it is thinning and shrinking. It is thinning and shrinking. This is important. Please note these points. Permafrost melting. This is related to release of methane. Okay. Then coming to land ice melting. When land ice is melting, what will happen? Say what will happen when land ice is melting? When land ice is melting, what happens is sea level will change. That means what? The sea level will increase. The content of water will increase, which will lead to increase in sea level. Loss of sea ice. It has a very bad effect. It has detrimental, it has adverse effects on animals like polar bears and walruses. Next, coming to a very important point, our ecological concern. Ecosystem shifts from Arctic to subarctic communities. So there is a shift in the ecosystem. This has to be taken care of. Next, coming to increase human activities. It is we. We can never keep ourselves away from destroying nature, right? Then coming to increase human activities, shipping, oil production, these when done in a manner which is like in a careless manner can lead to destruction of the ecosystem of this particular region. Okay, so this is how we come to an end of our lecture of regarding polar regions. I hope you have enjoyed learning with me. If you have any doubts, any confusion anywhere, please feel free to get back to me in the comment section. Okay, thank you so much.